Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wealthed Up with Donnie Mangos. That's me. I'm your host. We talk about all things that are generating wealth, not necessarily investing, because the two aren't always the same thing. Taxes and preserving wealth, these are all the topics we talk about here. So we're going to get talking about taxes, talking about the CRA, dun dun dun, and learn all about, well, it's not that bad after all. Let's get into it. Sunny Widerman is joining us today.
Nice to be here.
Joining me today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
There she is. Sunny, well, you'll get to see this in a few moments. Sunny is just a bundle of energy and a bundle of joy in a tax world, which normally, Sunny, people aren't like you in that space.
I keep hearing this.
You are a breath of fresh air. Sunny owns and operates Personal Tax Advisors based out of Toronto, right in the heart of Toronto. And she is saving people from themselves and saving them from the CRA, dare I say, or from the burden of having to communicate with the CRA. So Sunny, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
We'll start this with a bang. You finished tax season for 2024. Can I have one crazy story out of the gate? What you saw?
We had a client come in to do, I think, probably a couple of returns. I think she was a little bit behind. Well, she definitely was behind. And she mentioned to one of my preparers that she was also going to have to sell her house because she had this giant tax bill that she couldn't handle. This was not generated by the returns that we were doing. It was already there. And it turned out that she hadn't actually filed those returns. They had been filed by CRA. These are called notional returns. When they ask for returns and you don't send them in a certain amount of time, they'll just sort of make something up for you. And so they'd made something up for her. And it was a crushing tax burden. But my people have a keen ear for, wait a second, I don't think that's right. Because the thing about notional assessments that CRA does is they're never in your favor. And usually you would benefit from filing your own version. And in fact, that's what CRA wants you to do. The notional return is terrible in part because they don't want you to leave it there. They want you to file something real, not go by a made up thing. When we did it, it turned out she was getting something like $17,000 back. She didn't owe it.
So here I am. I'm selling my house and now I'm getting back 17 grand.
Your life has changed. And what has happened is that something had gone wrong. She hadn't filed whatever. She gets the letters. She's scared. She's frozen in place. So they file something. Then they issue her a bill. All these things just make her feel like she's more terrified than she was to begin with. And she was pretty terrified to begin with. But the fact is that there were things she could do. And she didn't know that there were things she could do. And that, in fact, CRA was all in favor of her doing those things.
Yeah, I think we're going to spend a lot of time on that specific, that same thesis. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknown, and unknown equates to fear. I believe in the Canadian marketplace, whenever you see that dreaded brown envelope in your mailbox from the CRA, you assume something's wrong, and now I got to deal with it. And what do we do as human nature? You want to avoid the problem, so we turn a blind eye to it and ignore it. And ignoring it doesn't always pay off, it doesn't appear. So notional returns. Well, there's two things about the CRA and the way that they handle certain things with tax filings that really upset me. They bother me only because they're based on assumptions, they're based on alternative realities. Let's call it that. One is notional filings. Ouch, right? You're absolutely right. They only know what they know. You haven't given them any deductions. You haven't given them any information to counter what they know. And so they're making assumptions, and they're generally going to be punitive to get you to wake up and so that they're not leaving money on the table. Second one would be, and we don't have to get into it today, but alternative minimum tax, AMT. And a lot of people don't know what that is or that it even exists. Can I bug you to explain AMT to the audience? And why?
That probably should wait for another talk.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
Okay. It's a scary. We'll do this. it's pretty scary that it exists. I understand why it exists. It's an entirely different set of rules that none of the tax professionals are generally filing returns for. Is that fair to say, Sunny?
It's very rare.
Yeah. And then the inputs that you toss in there are applied to a second system that a CRA is running called alternative minimum tax, or alternative way of creating a tax report or tax filing. And it gives a different number. And based on the two different numbers, whichever one is more, you'll get that bill for the tax year. So it's scary. I want you to know how I feel about this. So we can leave it at that, Sunny. There's some changes that happened last year that really frightened me. That's it. So, okay, here I am. Now, Sunny, I'm a guy with a business. I have a corporation. I have a family. I am a Canadian citizen, all of that stuff. And even I have an uneasy feeling in general when dealing with personal taxes, when dealing with CRA. And Sunny, I know you solve problems like that for people just like me and all those around me. We had a very long talk once before just about the tax system. And I brought up how it's about 6 feet thick at this point and all these different rules. And you're like, no, look, you're right. It is long, but understand the point of what it's trying to achieve. I'm sorry for asking you to be redundant and repeat it for this audience, because I thought the way you handled that discussion was brilliant. And I want to hear from you, and I think the world should hear from you. How do you feel about applying tax, income tax act, and all that stuff when it comes to us Canadians?
How do I feel about it?
Why it's there, what it's doing. Are we contributing? Are we charged too much? Like, are the exceptions fair? All that kind of stuff. Maybe I don't want don't want you to write a Bible on it, but I do want to share your opinion on how you approach tax, how you feel about tax in general.
Well, I start with point of the fact that we live in sort of large, complex societies is because it allows us to do collectively what we couldn't do individually. No one of us could construct the highways that serve our cities or the sewer systems or any of that stuff. We create those things together, and we create those things with a common pot of money. And taxation is still the most efficient way to get everybody to contribute, short of having us each spend 1 day a year working on the highway system. I mean, that's just not the way, that doesn't make any sense. So as a concept, taxes really are kind of unavoidable if we want to have the kind of major projects and things happening in our lives to make our lives more comfortable and longer and healthier and easier and wealthier on the whole. We all do have to chip into these larger things. Now, as for whether we're being charged the right amount of tax, it's tough to say, right? I mean, you're being charged the right amount of tax when there's no waste and there's nobody skipping out and there's nobody overpaying or underpaying, and the projects are all making sense and the bids are all being taken properly. I mean, a lot of pieces have to come into place for it to be absolutely the right amount of tax. I will say, though, that most kind of modern first world democracies charge fairly similar tax rate in general. So there does seem to be a sort of a general consensus about what it costs to run a modern nation. So I can't go any further than that, but I do find that, if you, there are higher ones and lower ones, but they are all kind of coming in at a similar level.
All right, there's an ish. And fundamentally, we do need tax revenue to fund the things that we don't want to do ourselves or incapable of doing on our own anyways.
We couldn't possibly.
And this is part of, I completely agree. There is a need to collect tax revenue. Yes.
But one thing that is going wrong, and I mean, this is going to be sort of a larger conversation, it's not really that relevant to individuals, is that it seems to be the way of the world that the people with the most resources are the best able to get away with not contributing. And this is an enormous problem. We have an enormous problem, and particularly with sort of offshore, playing games with the offshore investing and everything. I understand everybody's urged. Everybody wants to pay the least amount of tax possible. But the problem is that we are now losing billions to this. able to close the door because a whole bunch of much more powerful people than you and I are holding that door open because they want it that way, you know? And so we have this system that is not intentionally unfair, but is sort of unfair. But that said, on the level of an individual trying to interact with the Canada Revenue Agency, trying to actually, because I do find that most Canadians want to pay their fair share. They're aware that our life in this country is very comfortable, and they don't want to feel that they're freeloaders. Everybody wants to have the kind of, self sense of pride that comes from knowing that you're doing your part. The problem with people's interactions with CRA is that CRA has become, for a lot of people, very opaque, very difficult to understand the route through it. When you work in it like I do, we kind of understand the route. Like we can be facing a specific issue that we've never seen before, but we kind of know how to handle it because we know how they want things. We know that they want certain things in writing. We know what information we have to include, and we know what they don't care about. They don't really care. It's a bit like going to the dentist after years and years of not going to the dentist, right? People tend to want to spend a lot of time apologizing for whatever they haven't done in the past. And the Canada Revenue Agency, much like your dentist, usually doesn't really care. They just want you to get on board here. The process of getting on board, however, can become kind of complicated. And right now, it's exceptionally so, because actually the CRA itself is underfunded. And we see this every day in that people who are trying to get into what's called compliance, they're trying to get everything squared away so it doesn't come and, crash down on them 10 years from now unpredictably. They just want to get it done, are having a really hard time getting through to a Canada Revenue Agency agent. It's
right.
The first thing they cut are the people who talk to ordinary people. And so our job, I often describe us as liaisons. We're the CRA liaison. We help turn your human English or French issue into the kind of bureaucratic clarity. I mean, from their perspective, it's clearer if it's laid out in this bureaucratic way. We do that. Turn your communication into something they can understand and turn their communication into something that you can understand. There is a way, but you got to know the way, the language, And right now, if you don't speak that language, it's very difficult.
So speaking the languages, so let's get into that part of it, because just read a report again. There's 55,000 CRA employees, and it's hard to get a hold of anyone at this point.
Right.
And that is a problem. So speaking the language is cool if you can find a human that you can speak with, right? It sounds like even though there are numbers in that quantity, you still can't get a hold of somebody if you have a question. I'm going to share a personal experience. So someone very close to me was dealing with an issue. I won't say it wasn't complicated. It was more complicated than a typical HST payment or whatever. It was still had to explain the issue. Trying to get a hold of someone was very difficult. When you finally do, it's just loaded with, oh, okay, here's what you have to do. Here's your 5 options and do something about this. So they did, and it involved printing off things on paper, signing stuff off, putting it in an envelope, sending it. Canada Post strike happens, it disappears. Months go by, got to do it all over again. Send it in, verify, did you receive it? Hope that someone answers the phone and says, yes, they did. So they understand the process. What I'm trying to say, it's so difficult and cumbersome to do this. And in the end, the mental anxiety around the financial consequences of that. And I know that you probably would have seen this differently because of your experience. You would have been very calm about the whole thing. That person was not calm about the whole thing. There's a lot of money for an elderly person. There was a lot of money that was just kind of in limbo at the CRA. So having first of all, speaking the language, like I said, is very difficult if there's no one to speak with. So that is a concern that I think a valid concern we all have at the moment, with just getting access to anybody who we can bounce ideas off of or just toss that around. It sounds like for the most part, though, your position is more like your comrades. You believe your comrades with the CRA. Like we're here to. I understand what you're after. Your intent is noble. Your intent is to keep the system, in line with what was created to do. And my goal is to help make that even more accessible and understandable by Canadians in general. Amazing, because we do need that. In general, the perspective or the perception of the general public towards CRA is anything but what you describe, right? With people generally, if you took a poll, they don't feel of the CRA as comrades, right? They feel that they are
Opponents.
they're in the middle of the night, they're dangling around looking through your jewelry drawer and things like that, trying to find ways to steal from you. It's amazing the disconnect that exists, and I think your perspective is entirely thoughtful and entirely pleasant. And I don't think a lot of people feel that way. I don't like seeing CRA in my inbox, I'll tell you that much. And I don't like when they call. It's never going to be a good thing, and I don't want to deal with it. So it's nice to know that, Sunny, you exist to help me avoid having to deal with this stuff. And it's nice to have somebody throw in between me and the CRA. So anyone who's listening to this, that's what Sunny is there to intercept those communications, be a liaison, and understand and deliver some results.
I genuinely, I got a phone call from CRA this morning, and I was like, oh, good. We're good. Questions. Oh. Yeah. I knew she had some questions for me. I wanted to get them answered because that was going to clear my clients the next hurdle and get them through. I thought she's following up on this thing. I'm ready. I got the information for her. We had a perfectly lovely exchange, but I get it. It's amazing. And, when you are, like what you were talking about, not being able to get through, when you're calling, you are trying to get through to the first level of agents.
Yes.
These agents,
Gen Pop,
right? They don't have a lot of knowledge because they're not specialists. They're highly in demand. Obviously, you can't get through. And generally, like when we will call them, we're trying to get away from that person as soon as possible, because basically what that first person is the best equipped to answer is like, when can I make my RSP contribution? When will I get my, child tax benefit? Like that level of information is what they're there for. They don't really know anything else. And so what you want to do, if you do call and you do manage to get through, you want to describe what you want to know about, top level, as concisely as you can. So if you have an issue with, I don't know. I received this notice about my TFSA. I don't understand it. Well, TFSA maybe not. It's a little, because they'll first sell that's something they have some common knowledge about too, but something a little more like whatever your elderly person was looking into, you sort of give the topic line, like what is it about? Because that way you can immediately signal to them that they don't know enough to help you.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, okay, let me pass you on to somebody. And that person actually knows things. So now that first level with the CRA agent who picks up the phone, usually the questions that you would ask them are things that we already know. So we don't actually need to talk to them, usually.
Okay.
Right. And for a lot of things, one of the other problems is that people don't really know how to use the CRA's own website to find what they need. And I think that's because I understand that people have a lot of trouble figuring out what is needed. We have a lot less trouble. We just understand it better. We just get it. Like, there's a form. I see. Yeah. And also there's Submit Documents, which is this online service for sending them things if you don't want to send them through the mail. Not everything can go that way, but an increasingly long list of stuff can go to them that way. And then you get a confirmation right away that it went. Still may take a while for them to respond to you, but you just have to hang on to that confirmation number. It's there. They have it. And you don't have to worry about Canada Post or anything else like that. A long list of things can go that way if you have access to my account. And the problem now is that people who have, for whatever reason, don't have access to my account, older people who aren't comfortable with it and would never use it anyway, and also people who've fallen several years behind, they'll be cut off from my account. And it's kind of a bit of an obstacle course to get reconnected to my account. But a lot of things are available online.
It's imperfect, but I get what you're saying.
It is.
Recent personal tax, Sunny, you help a lot of people that have previous years filings that are incomplete. Is that correct?
Yeah, or they've filed for a few years. Yeah, we help those.
So, old returns that you haven't filed. We all know people that live there. I don't know how people do that, but somehow they manage through that. Why did you focus on that, or why do you focus a part of your business on that? Do you enjoy it? And what is your ideal outcome? Can you get through everybody, get them all caught up? What would that look like?
We focus on them because we discovered a need. I wrote an article. It got a lot of response, and we discovered, because the thing is that however many people you know who are behind on taxes, you probably know 5 times as many as you think you know, because most people will not talk about it. It is really a very sensitive, very private issue that people feel personally bad about. And I want to make a note about this. What happens with a lot of people, they fall behind 1 year, they don't file 1 year because something disruptive has happened in their life. Somebody has passed away, they've had a fire, they've gotten a divorce, or a relationship has broken down. Like, it can be an emotional thing, they could have gotten ill. Many, many things can come into your life without your say-so and disrupt everything. And for that spring, filing your tax return simply is not a priority. Okay, that happened. But what happens a lot of times is that a year later, it's a bit like coming back from vacation, right? Your inbox is overflowing, right? So the crisis may have passed, but you're still not in a great position to now tackle 2 years tax returns. So now you got to do this last year's and this year's. And then if you don't manage to clear it in the second year, by the third year, it's 3 years. And I find that this is just, for most people, an overwhelming thing. The 3-year thing is an overwhelming thing. And besides the fact that they have a lot of work to do that's hard to do, hard to remember what happened 3 years ago, all that stuff, besides the fact that it is legitimately a difficult problem in practical terms, they do have a tendency to beat themselves up about this. They feel bad. And in a perfect world, number one is I would like those people to stop feeling bad. Just give yourself a break here. That crisis year wasn't your fault. And the fact that the problem keeps getting bigger, and so that now you're in a better place, maybe mentally, but you still can't tackle it because the problem is bigger, that does not make you a bad person. It's just a problem. It is a problem, but let's just make it a problem and not beat ourselves up about it. It's not constructive. So having said that, so yeah, we discovered a need, and a lot of people who are not talking about it, so they don't know, they're afraid to approach us. They're afraid of what we're going to say to them. And what we're going to say to them is, you're not a bad person. Now let's just pull together what we have and get something filed for you. Let's just get you filed, because it's always possible. It's always possible to put something together. And with the Canada Revenue Agency, something is always better than nothing. They just want to see something. And that's a thing that that's one of the fundamental misunderstandings that people have about CRA, is that 90% of the time when you get the brown envelope, they're not asking for money. They're asking for information. It's what they're always asking for. You just have to give it to them. But unfortunately, you have to give it in a form that they understand. So, what I would like to do is to relieve the mental anguish. And I don't use that word lightly. To remove that mental anguish of being a few years behind on your tax returns and feeling terrible. And every year it's bigger and you're afraid to have a bank account. We have clients who haven't had a bank account in 10 years because they're afraid that if they have a bank account, CRA is going to take everything out of there. And that may not be possible, but it may not be true, but it might be true. I don't know. But they're terrified. And what they're going through is worse than facing the problem head on.
Right. Okay. Moral of the story is we just got to deal with this stuff 100%. So in my previous life, one of my businesses in the real estate side, qualifying for a mortgage, which almost everybody requires when they're buying a property, that you need a mortgage. And look, the honest to God truth is you do need updated tax returns to show to your lender so they can qualify you and see if you're up to par, if you meet their qualification standards. This is unlocking, like finishing your returns, being complete, being transparent as much as you can be, as much as you can remember. Let's be honest. At least it opens a door to that stuff, to getting loans if you needed loans, to getting a mortgage if you needed a mortgage, to living life without fear. So yeah, it's nice to know. And I've listening to you speak about these people after year 1, year 2, year 3, I felt the anxiety secondhand right there for them, thinking, oh my gosh, I could see how it could just snowball. And you're so petrified. Now you got to, not only do you have to complete it, but now you got to look back in time and get everything that you've moved twice. Who knows where your stuff is? You know, this might have been before computerization of certain things. Your employer's out of business. How are you going to grab a T4 at this point? Like all of these things are going through your head and you just like, the task is too great. Not only do I have to try and find this, but it has to be accurate too. I don't know what accurateness now. I'm going to just get caught in a lie and I don't want to, so I avoid it. But I think the moral of the story said something is better than nothing. That stuck out with me there. It is important to get something in there. Get that checkbox completed at the CRA saying you did it.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's accurate, well, I guess we'll find out in a couple of years or so. But for the most part, they're happy that you did it. And that is better than doing nothing.
They really are. A big thing with CRA, you know, if you want to stay on CRA's good side, it's a lot like staying on the good side of your spouse. It's communication. If they contact you and you never respond, that's silence. If they want a return and there's no return, that emptiness, that lacuna, that nothingness is what drives them the craziest. It's what makes them escalate. The nothing is what makes them escalate. You know,
Okay.
Giving them anything, giving them a call, asking for time, at least touching base, that alone is so much better than just doing nothing.
These are great tips. So you shouldn't just hide under your sheets if they call, because they didn't forget about you is what's not going to happen.
No, they just have all
Right.
the time in the world. Because that's the other thing, right? You're not going to outrun them. They know where you live. They know where you work. They know
Right.
stuff. So it's like that. They move slowly there because they're a really big ship, and at the same time, they're not there to punish you. They're there to get you into the system again. You're kind of off, like a train that's pulling away and you're running alongside. You're not on the train. They want you on it, on it with everybody else. And there's so many things that intersect with the tax system. Like you said, getting a loan, getting a mortgage, but also like getting your benefits, getting your credits, getting the stuff that they want to give you, but they can't give it to you if you don't file.
Right.
With CRA, it's always about compliance, which sounds like they're standing on your neck, which I'm sure it feels like a lot of the time. But what they mean by compliance is that everything that's supposed to be filed is filed. Every piece of paper they're supposed to have, they have. The number one reason that we find when clients come to us and they say they froze my bank account, the number one reason is not because they owe a lot of tax. The number one reason is because they haven't filed GST returns. And they'll say, well, I opened that because I had a business, but I haven't been doing anything with it for the last 5 years. Yeah, okay. You need to file a bunch of zeros, but they need to see the zeros. So the account is frozen because you haven't just told them, I got nothing going on. Tell them you got nothing going on and you're done. Solved.
They might leave you alone. You just turned into a hero. I don't know if you know that. Like I saw a cape just sort of magically appear behind you. Sunny, I want to thank you for the insights are amazing. I actually do think, hey, CRA, if you're watching this call or you're listening to this, I think Sunny would be a great advocate. Get in front of the microphone at the CRA and just talking about, we're not bad people. We just want you to do certain things. And we're not here to do anything wrong to anybody. We don't want to take advantage of anybody. We just want to play fair. I think hearing it from you, it feels very different than reading about it on Twitter, just so you know. I think you probably agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
For those that really heard you and recognize that you are the foremost expert in this and they want to get a hold of you, what is the best way someone can contact you if they want to ask some questions or maybe file some returns in the past, catch up and make things right again?
So you're going to get in touch with us. Most of our intake is through email. My website, www.personaltaxadvisors with an ORS.ca. There's a contact page there. If we think we can maybe help you, we can give you a little consultation, sort of a no-charge consultation. If we just want to sort of flesh it out and see what it is that you need, there's no charge for that. If we can help you, we can either do a consult with you. We can become your liaison with CRA. We can help you clean up all those old returns. That's fine. And we're happy to talk to you. Also, I have a blog on my website with a lot of articles that have been up there. I've been putting them up for like 20 years now. So there's a lot of material there. I have a YouTube channel where you can, maybe see your question answered if you're not quite ready to talk to me. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Sunny, you're brilliant. You're a lovely human. You are refreshing. Thank you for being on that Wealth Up podcast with me. I hope to have you back sometime where we can talk about alternative minimum tax, perhaps.
It's its own thing. Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it.